My name is Rachel. I was a shepherdess. One afternoon, I went with my father's sheep to the well where all the sheep gathered so that the stone is rolled away from the mouth of the well and the sheep watered. When I got near, a man I did not know suddenly rolled the stone from the mouth of the well and watered my father's sheep. This man then kissed me and wept loudly. When he could speak, he told me that he was my father's kinsman, Rebecca's son. I quickly ran, told my father about it, and this is how Jacob came into our lives. I, Rachel, was beautiful in form and appearance. Jacob loved me and asked my father for my hand in marriage as his wage. He committed to work for my father for a 7-year period. My name is Leah. I was Rachel's older sister. I had weak eyes in appearance. After 7 years of Jacob working for my father made a feast, and in the evening, he gave me over to Jacob as his wife instead of my sister Rachel. And he also gave me a servant called Zilpah. My father deceived Jacob. In the morning, Jacob realized that I was the one he had been with and not Rachel. Jacob asked my father why he deceived him, yet he had worked for Rachel. My father said it was not in our custom to give the younger before the older in marriage. My father told him to complete the week with me as part of the wedding process, then he would also get Rachel. Rachel, was married off to Jacob 1 week after his wedding with my sister Leah. My father gave me Bilhah to be my servant. My husband loved me more than my sister, and so he served my father for another 7 years. The Lord saw that I, Leah, was hated, and he opened my womb, and I conceived and bore my husband a son. I called him Reuben, because God looked on my affliction, and now my husband would love me. I conceived again and gave birth to another son. I called this one Simeon, and I said, God heard that I was hated and gave me this son. I conceived at that time and gave birth to a son. I called him Levi, and I said, this time round my husband would be attached to me because I bore him 3 sons. Then I conceived and bore a 4th son. I called his name Judah, and I said, this time I will praise the Lord. Then I stopped conceiving. Rachel, did not bear any children for my husband Jacob. And I envied my sister. She had now gotten 4 sons. I told my husband to give me children or else I would die. My husband in his anger asked me whether he was in the place of God who had withdrawn the fruit of my womb. So I told my husband to sleep with my servant Bilhah so that I could get children through her. She conceived and bore Jacob a son. God judged me and heard my voice and gave me a son. I called his name Dan. My servant conceived again and bore a son. I wrestled with my sister, a mighty wrestling, and I prevailed. So I called the boy Naphtali. Leah, stopped conceiving, and so I took my servant Zilpah to be Jacob's wife. She conceived and bore a son. I called him Gad, because good fortune had come. My servant conceived again and bore a 2nd son. I called him Asher, because I was happy, and the women called me happy. One day, my son Reuben found mandrakes in the field and brought them to me. You know what they are for. Rachel heard that I had mandrakes and asked me for some of them. I asked Rachel why she wanted to take my son's mandrakes too after taking my husband from me. So Rachel allowed me to sleep with Jacob on that night in exchange for the mandrakes. Leah, went out to meet Jacob when he came back from the fields on that day. You must sleep with me, I told him, because I hired you for mandrakes. And Jacob did. God listened to me. I conceived, and I bore Jacob a fifth son. I called his name Issachar. God gave me my wages because I gave my servant to my husband. I conceived for the sixth time and bore another son. The sixth son was Zebulun. God endowed me with a good endowment. Now my husband would honor me. I had borne him six sons. Afterwards, I bore a daughter and named her Dinah. God remembered me, Rachel, and listened to me and opened my womb. I conceived and bore a son and called his name Joseph, saying, May the Lord add me another son. After my son Joseph was born, one day my husband called Leah and I into the fields where his flock was. He told us that our father did not regard him with favor as he did before, but the God of his father had been with him. He reminded us that he had served our father with all his might, yet our father cheated him and changed his wage 10 times. But God did not permit him to harm Jacob. When Laban, our father, would say the spotted flock would be Jacob's wage, all the flock bore spotted. If striped, all the flock bore stripes. Therefore, God had taken the flock of our father and given them to him. Jacob told us of a dream he had in the breeding season. The goats that mated with the flocks were striped, spotted, and mottled. The angel of the Lord said to Jacob in this dream that all the goats that mate with the flock are striped, spotted, and mottled, because he had seen what Laban our father was doing to him. He said he was the God of Bethel, where Jacob anointed a pillar and made a vow to him. God then told Jacob to leave our land and go back to the land of his kindred. We told him there was no portion or inheritance left for us in our father's house and that he regarded us as foreigners because he sold us and devoured our money. All the wealth God had taken from our father was ours and for our children. So we told Jacob to do what God told him to do. When my father went to shear his sheep, I, Rachel, stole my father's household gods. Well, Jacob arose and set us and our sons on camels and drove away all his livestock, all property he had gained, and we left Padan Aram to go to the land of Canaan to his father Isaac. Our father Laban caught up with us after about 10 days. One of the reasons was because his gods were missing. Not knowing I had stolen these gods from my father, Jacob said the one found with them would be put to death. My father checked Leah's tent, the female servants' tents. Then he came to mine, Rachel. He looked everywhere and found nothing. I had hidden them in the camel's saddle that I was sitting on. So I told my father that I could not stand because I was in the way of women. Oh, yeah, I could not stand. Later, when we journeyed from Bethel and were still some distance from Ephrath, my sister Rachel went into labor, very hard labor. When the labor was at its hardest, the midwife told her not to fear. She had borne another son, and as her soul was departing, she called her son Ben-Oni, but his father called him Benjamin. Rachel died, and she was buried on the way to Ephrath, Bethlehem. And Jacob set a pillar over her tomb. Later, Leah also died. Leah was buried in the tomb where Abraham, Sarah, Isaac, and Rebekah were buried. This is the story of Rachel and Leah, the two sisters who got married to one husband. We see their story, we see their cries, and we also see how God, in His mercy and love, comes in and hears their cries and answers them. And be very blessed as you just think about the stories of the women in the Bible and how they apply in your lives and what lessons you can learn from them, especially when we look at how God responds to the women and we start looking at ourselves, not in the way we think we are, but in the way God sees us as women. God bless you so much and have a lovely time.